All right. So welcome to the user group. We talked about this a little bit last time, but there's a little bit of a change in procedures at the MTC. Everyone has to be pre-registered to be allowed in. The new rule basically says they don't allow walk-ins anymore. So going forward, please make sure that you do register at least a day in advance. We do share the list around noon, the day of, with the facility here, security thing. So if you have any questions on the user group, my name is Dimitri. I'm one of the organizers. I also have with me here Bill, Mike, and Dave. So if you have any complaints, you can direct it to them. And we're going to keep our agenda as we typically do. We'll start with some of the updates from the last 30 days within M365. Of course, it's not comprehensive. It's just cherry-picked ones that we thought were interesting. We'll dive into our featured content, where we have Ruben here talking to us about Copilot. And then we're going to wrap it up with some Q&A. So if you're running into a problem in your environment, or if you've solved a really challenging problem, you're looking for work, you're looking to hire, as well as different community events that are coming up here in the local area, as well as across the country. We'll wrap it up with a raffle, and then we usually go across the street and we grab a drink as an optional social hour. Right, so the previous session was myself. This was another Copilot session, really packed with demos in terms of how I use it as a business owner. It is available on YouTube. Thanks, Bill, for posting that. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. I think you'll get a lot of interesting ideas out of there.
I would like to say, yes, I watched that, and I like to see that it was super great to have actual business operations examples. I thought that was super helpful. So I totally agree. You're welcome.
All right, so a reminder, we've been talking about this for a while. Now we're really hitting the end of the road. Stream Classic is going away on Marathon Monday. So if you have not migrated the videos that you wish to keep, then you are going to lose them pretty soon. And you have a last chance to go out and migrate them now. Microsoft does provide a free migration tool through the Mover IO interface, gives you a full report, and it even maps which ones are like personal recordings that will go to OneDrive or group ones that you have to pick the final resting place. If you don't do this and you wake up on the 15th and realize your corporate training videos or in town halls or other meetings you want to preserve are no longer visible, Microsoft is saying that they can't help you. So definitely take this up if you haven't. Another feature that I thought was pretty cool. So there's going to be a new option to have different section backgrounds on your SharePoint pages. And they're starting with a variety of gradient backgrounds that you see in the top right there. And in about a month or two, we'll also have the ability to go and actually upload our own images. This just gives us the ability to spice up our pages and make them look a little bit nicer. Nice. There's a new feedback button coming to SharePoint. So unless you disable this, this will be rolled out early May. And this will be a little feedback icon in the top right corner over by the gear icon. And this will give you the ability to send the Microsoft product team feedback, good, bad, and otherwise. And you could also see this feedback within the admin center. Just like with the last time that Microsoft had the feedback button in the bottom right corner, you really need to train your users to not use this to open tickets, because we've seen people that submit feedback, I can't get access to this content, or I'm having a problem, and they expect that IT is receiving that and actioning upon it. So just a bit of a training topic there.
You turn that off.
So is this
turn off?
Is this replacing that feed, the little hover?
The little hover I thought was pulled out years ago.
Oh, okay.
Unless we just disabled it everywhere. but yes, presumably if you still have the hover, it should replace it. Another really cool feature that's coming is your ability to see what settings have changed in your SharePoint Online Admin Center over a period of time. This would have been super helpful. We had a client a few years ago that they had a SharePoint designer workflow that just stopped working, and none of the error codes made any sense. Days of troubleshooting, Premier tickets later, and it turns out that the head of IT disabled SharePoint designer workflows in the admin center before he went on a week-long vacation, because he saw that turned on and said, "Oh, we shouldn't have anyone doing it," not realizing there was an actual, production workflow that was using it. So had we had the feature at the time, we would have saved a few days of troubleshooting. But this is just going further into this whole line of Microsoft adding more control over the environment. We've already seen the site level settings that are and reports of changes that are being rolled out. So this is certainly a welcome change in my book. All right, moving forward, Viva Connections Advanced Analytics. So as we all know, there's analytics on your internet. It's not bad. It's not great. There's a lot of features and functionality missing when you compare it to something, let's say, like a Microsoft Clarity, a Google Analytics, or another third-party tool that we typically insert in. So Microsoft is taking the native analytics and improving them. They're giving you more historical access, 90-day values as opposed to just the 30 days that you get today. Plus, they're giving you some trending information over the last 12 months. In my book, if you're running an intranet for a mid or larger size organization, I would still recommend putting Google Analytics and getting that next level of detail. But if you have a smaller site or maybe you're not as worried about your audience, adoption and so forth, this could be a good addition. All right, let me just make sure. Yep. Okay, so the next is a new scope search option for Viva Connections. So I think we've all been there before where we're in Teams, we click on our intranet icon, we go to search for something, and we get results from all over the place. So this new scope option will default to only searching within your intranet if you're inside of that Viva Connections app. But as you start typing, you also have the ability to click into a different scope, such as to search files or group chats or other elements. So this is just improving that search experience inside of Teams. And as you can see in the bottom right corner here, if you actually do a normal search, it'll give you your SharePoint intranet results page back, as opposed to the Teams results page that is not always helpful when looking for intranet content. Next update, Viva Insights. So the daily digest that we all receive is being paused on April 1st. Microsoft has received a lot of feedback that people weren't really happy with, getting annoyed at first thing in the morning with the here's what you have to do email. So this being put on hold and Microsoft's taking more feedback. And the future of this is unknown.
Back on the feedback. It went out really early in the morning. Sometime I got it. Yeah.
There's a new experience coming to OneDrive for the web. So when you go to click to add a new item, as opposed to just having the ability to create a new file or upload a file, you can now have a number of predefined templates that are either recommended by Microsoft, or you can upload your own templates where you can get started on a specific type of document. So like if you're going to create a new draft of a proposal, you might have a proposal template you want to preload, and it just makes it a little bit easier to move forward. I think a lot of these designs are put together using some of the new AI features. This is rolling out this next month. The title on this slide is wrong. There's a new media feature where, a lot of us use OneDrive to sync the photos from our phone, where we have other media that we might have, download screenshots and so forth. And there's not an easy way to just look at OneDrive and say, show me all of my pictures and videos, right? You would have to drill into the folder, change the view. So this new feature will be a tier 1 link on the left navigation to just show you my media. This will show you all of your videos and photos from across your entire OneDrive. So again, super nice, especially when I'm taking pictures of whiteboards or things like that, where I have to remember exactly what folder they're in. Yeah. All right, next thing is our favorite topic in this user group, which is licensing. So as we all know, for a lot of the features in Microsoft 365, you need one license to enable the feature, but you're out of license compliance if you only have one license assigned in your environment and users that are taking advantage of it that are not licensed. So we've seen Microsoft over the years, get better at actually enforcing license restrictions. This is no change to how the license is written or applied or anything else, but now they're going to start enforcing it. So if you are using sensitivity labels inside of your environment and your users are not licensed to do so, they will no longer be able to do so. So keep that in mind. I know this is a core security feature that many organizations use. So if you are using it, now would be a good time to go through and just make sure that you're licensed accordingly.
Yeah. What's the minimum license? Like a G3 would be fine.
Oh, yeah, E3 is the minimum license. G3 is covered as well. Business premiums involved. There's also standalone licenses like your AIP, Azure Information Protection Plan 1 and 2.
And then the users who aren't licensed, they just can't use that feature.
That's how Microsoft has worded it. They haven't explained exactly what's going to happen. Presumably, you wouldn't be able to tag content. Maybe taking it a step further, you might not be able to open it, but I'm not quite sure there. And of course, if you want auto labeling, you need the E5.
Right.
All right, moving forward, we have a new app launcher coming when you're in the browser.
I got this today. Very alarming.
So the general release is early April. Targeted release is at right now. So you're probably running targeted release in your environment. So you're gonna start seeing this. The key changes is that, they're becoming a little bit more user friendly. They're removing the most recent documents that was rarely used from that launcher. And of course, you have the options here to create new Word, PowerPoint, Excel files, and so forth.
I like that the search bar is brought forward. That's
Yeah,
actually
nice.
really helpful. One less click to get to the search bar.
So for those that have been dabbling with Copilot or have clients that have been, one of the first parts of Copilot readiness is really doing your security assessment, making sure that your permissions are aligned to the way they should be. A lot of our clients have faced this one. Delve first came on the market, I don't know, 5, 6, 8 years ago. And everyone was like, wait, everyone can see my files. And it was a great time to go back and do a permissions audit and lock things down the way they should be. We're kind of experiencing the same kind of moment now with Copilot, where Copilot can source information that the user has access to. But if that user's been overshared with, then they get access to more stuff, right? So Microsoft, to help combat that and help accelerate people that are looking to do pilots, is now giving us a limited set of SharePoint sites that could be used to source content for Copilot. So in other words, if you have authoritative sites around your sales data, around your intranet, HR policies, et cetera, you could say, okay, these are up to 100 different sites that I want you to use if the user has access into it, right? To go and be used as the grounding data for Copilot. So this just helps reduce the risk that, you have permission sprawl all over the place. I was just talking to Chris in the hallway before the session, and he mentioned this might also have an impact to the search scope or search index in your environment. So I think we'll have to read more about this as it starts to roll out.
Does that specifically limit the scope to just those sites, or is it setting a priority for those sites? It limits the scope.
I mean, you can still exclude sites from the search index in the cloud, right? But I think this is Copilot focused. All right, the other thing is that there's a new Teams client that is being scheduled to roll out. So if you're still using Teams Classic, now would be a good time to start using the new one and making sure that the rest of your organization is aware. The previous timelines were that by April 1st, I believe, the old Teams client will be disabled and everyone that tries to open Teams will automatically be directed into the new client. There's been some pushback and there's been some challenges that customers have voiced. So Microsoft has pushed back that mandatory date to July 1st. They say they might expand it further depending on what happens between now and then. But if you haven't planned on deploying the new Teams to your organization, you absolutely should start thinking about that. The interface is similar, but it's a little bit different. Most of the functionality is the same, but it's also a little bit different. So you might want to have a small change management campaign around the deployment. There's also a new VDI client becoming available for Teams that are going to make the Teams experience better. So think of this if you're working within a Citrix environment or if you're within Windows 365 environment, RDS environment. There's certain limitations for what Teams can do because you're trying to transmit your video audio to this machine and then it goes back to the Microsoft cloud. So some of the new features include better gallery examples, 1080p video, better acceleration on the endpoints, and this is rolling out late next month. So we've talked about this for a bit as well, which is Microsoft announcing at Ignite that they're going to be merging Planner with To Do with Project for the Web into one new mega project called Planner.
That won't be confusing at all.
So I welcome this change because I mean, to me, the fundamental difference between Planner versus Project for the Web was the ability to have dependencies on tasks and generate Gantt charts. So if one thing slips, you can see the impact to the overall schedule. So that's all being folded in here, and this is going to replace the existing Tasks by Planner and the To Do app in Teams with the new app called Microsoft Planner. This is rolling out later this month and into early next month.
Question: and I'm with you on the differences there, but one of the big differences there was in order to get those Gantt charts and dependencies, you had to be licensed for project. Is that also changing now?
I haven't seen anything around the new license guidance. which tells me that this would probably follow the least common denominator, probably likely bundled in most of your Office 365 SKUs.
That's huge.
I expect if they require the Project Plan 1 license, then there would be a lot more notifications about it, and probably a lot more resistance. Now, if you want Project on your desktop, or if you want the portfolio and program management aspects of Project that come with Plan 5, those aren't changing. But the question is, will Project Plan 1 still exist after this, or what will that include? I think anyone's guess is as good as mine.
Someone just put in chat, a lot of the new items for Planner, you need premium license. You can do a 30-day trial for the premium. So it may be possible the Gantt chart might be under the premium license.
We'll keep an eye on that, and we can talk more about it next month. All right, last few updates here. So there is an end of life coming to Windows 10, the edition that was released in the second half of 2021. So as we know, Windows has been on 6-month release cycles, first half or second half. At one point, they switched to 12-month release cycles. I'm not sure if they're back to 6-month. But long story short, if your users have been delaying doing updates, now is a good time to go into your device inventory and make sure that whatever builds you have in your environment are going to continue to be supported. Because June of this year is going to be the last security update for this version of Windows. And after that point, there's going to be no more security patches. So it's always good to stay up to date. Now you're kind of getting, where you really have to take action. So thanks to Turn Digital for sponsoring the food and whatnot at this user group. And with that being said, we're going to move over to our main event. So we have Reuven presenting you and Copilot. What's the missing component?
So I can say hi to people online, but I don't think you want to stare at my nose the whole time. So glad to be back in Boston. It's been a while. In 1985, I graduated from computer science at the University of Toronto. And that was an eventful year for me. I got married that year, and I got into graduate school for the Department of Psychology. And I saw a speech by Geoffrey Hinton. I don't know how many people know that name, Geoffrey Hinton. He's just retired as a Google fellow. He is considered by many the father of modern AI. And he presented that year in 85. He was being wooed by the University of Toronto, where he did spend the rest of his teaching career, or most of it. But he came and he gave a speech to the graduate school, Department of Cognitive Science and Psychology, about neural networks and how the first I'd ever heard of neural networks for AI. And it blew my neural network. It like turned on a whole new set of lights for me. I thought it was an amazing idea. But it kind of hit some dead ends. A lot of people thought that Hinton was going to hit a dead end there. I actually changed my grad thesis to because I was doing cognitive psychology. I was going to do Piagetian learning model for development of babies, cognitive development using this. It didn't work. It was a problem. But so there was lots of issues around getting this to work for years and years and years and years. And then we started to live in a world where everything got branded AI. There's all these AI tools, but I didn't really think that they were AI. They didn't really hit the mark on AI. There were a lot of statistical modeling, Bayesian analysis, all these different things that were called AI. But for me, it was just a marketing term, and you could classify me as a skeptic when it came to AI. And then, December of 22, my world turned upside down, right? Everything changed. I logged into ChatGPT, to OpenAI's ChatGPT. And this is actually one of the very first things that I typed in there. And the reason that I have it is I took a screenshot and sent it to my father, because I said, look at this. This is like crazy amazing. I said, give me a timeline for a 90-day project to update the information architecture for a SharePoint implementation. And like, I wouldn't have handed that to a client as is, but sure, as a starting point, just incredible. And I could drill down and ask questions. Okay, break down the weeks for weeks 31 to 60. What are the details on that? And if start breaking that into pieces. Yeah, I think the first thing I said is write a poem about the company I work for. And I did that, like, just completely turned over the idea. I said the world is in a different place than it was, right? It's moved on because this really is the start of real AI. And now we're sort of surrounded by these big companies with their big AI stuff. Gemini, Anthropic, OpenAI was the one who kicked it off for me. X has got Grok. And of course, we have Copilot in the Microsoft world. So I'm going to start. We're going to do 2 or 3 of these over the course of the meeting. I want to get feedback from you. So you can do this on your computer. You can do this on your phone. Log into menti.com or just take a picture of the QR code with your phone and you will get into menti.com. And let me as you all come in here, I'm going to leave it up for a second so you can get the code. Or you can just go to menti.com and then enter this number. Stop. It'll be at the top of each page. So I want to ask you about your experience with large language models, with this type of AI that we're doing here. Are you in since day one? Essentially November, December 22? Have you been exploring it more recently, using it frequently? Do you use it every day, no matter when you started? Are you like, this stuff is incredible, it helps me daily, this is what I do? Please. Online, we'll give everyone a minute to get in there. Again, at the top of the screen, you'll see menti.com and the code number to get in. Interesting. Okay, if people have entered, I'm going to move to the next question. How do you use it? General exploration? Do you use it to create or edit documents? Do you use it in Teams for meetings? Helping with troubleshooting code or writing code, or helping compose emails? What is your use case, your common use case for this? And by the way, at the end, I'll be able to share all this out to you. So if you're interested in the results. Across the board here. Reading and editing documents is neck and neck with general exploration.
That's actually not surprising because of the fact people use data in different ways and actually approach it from different angles. So
yep,
we have such a good cross section in this user group that actually is.
So my next thing is going to see a little deeper into that. You can type in words and it'll build a little word cloud. So if 2 people type the same word, how else do you use it? What are some areas that you use AI for that might not have appeared? You can use the same ones that were there or some others that might not have appeared. You type words, they'll pop up here. Image generation, sure, that's huge. That's huge. Designer's been getting a lot better lately. And marketing. Rising videos. Big cloud here. A code. BBA, is that still around? Playing poems. Summarization is good. PowerShell. Very cool. Thank you for filling that in. We'll have a couple of other stops along the way on that as well. When I was a teenager, I learned to fly. I was going to use I'm going to use a metaphor today. I'm going to try. It's going to stretch it. It might break a couple of times in a couple of places, but I'm going to use this flying metaphor today as we think about Copilot. I did a little search when I first had this idea to talk about this. I did some searching, and I was a little surprised that I didn't find more examples of this. But anyway, so I'm going to use this metaphor. And I wanted to think about, what does it take to be a safe, qualified, effective pilot? The first is strategy and planning, right? It's not a great idea to get in an airplane and just take off, unless maybe you're like in a rural area or something like that. Generally, once you're in the air, there's a fair bit of pressure. And if anything starts to go wrong or there's any problems, trying to figure out what to do next is complicated and dangerous. So having a flight plan, knowing where you're going, pulling the charts for the airports where you're going to be or where your alternatives are, looking at the chart and seeing, if there's any special events going on. Is there a balloon event happening between where you are and where you're going? You need to look into all that stuff, right? Plan your flight so you know where you're going and what you're doing. The next thing is safety checks, right? You have to check that the flaps are working and that the various things. This guy is right now checking that there's no water in the gas, right? So pre-flight inspection and safety checks. These are important to being able to be a safe flyer. Getting instruction from a qualified instructor, right? So that you know what you're doing. Communication is essential. Knowing how to communicate, knowing the protocols for communication, how to get that done, also important. And then one of the most important things is understanding the rules of the road or the rules of the air. You have to understand charts like this that tell you how high or how low you can be, what the frequencies are to communicate, what are the no-go zones, what are the go zones, right? So these are all pieces of the puzzle, and I'm going to try and relate them back to some of the story that we're going to be telling. So how do I stretch this metaphor to our story? You are the pilot of your workday, right? You are the person who carries your day forward, decides what you're going to be doing, has to get the job done. And into this world where we're the pilot of the workday, Microsoft has given us a powerful, functional co-pilot, capable co-pilot to help us get our job done. By the way, these images were generated from Microsoft Designer, right? So using modern AI. I don't know, does this work with the eyeballs and things? So Microsoft has given us the co-pilot. But there is a missing piece of the puzzle. And what is that missing piece? Air traffic control, right? Air traffic control. You can't just go up there. How do you ensure that your flight is going to meet the demands of air traffic control and also of the FAA for safety, efficiency, privacy, value, and maybe even some fun, right? We are not working in a vacuum, right? We don't fly in a vacuum. You can't fly in a vacuum, but there's other airplanes in the sky. There's other people doing work. There's leadership in your organizations. So air traffic control for Copilot is an essential element. So I talked about flight planning. So let's talk about this. You can't just jump in the plane and start flying. Figuring out where you're going and what you're doing is a dangerous way to start. You have to have a plan, an idea of how you're going, where you're going to go, what you're going to do, and what you're going to take to get there. For the enterprise, what you need to think about is, what's your strategic goal? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to be able to work faster? Do you want quality to go up? Do you want speed? Are you trying to cut headcount? Hopefully that's not the goal. But and what programs are you going to put in place for training, adoption, support to make sure that you get the value of the investment that you put into your Copilot, your AI investment? So these are the questions that you need to ask before you can before you go on this journey. So I showed a young person doing a safety check on a little Cessna. If you're flying an airliner, the safety checks, yes, there's similarities, but when you're an airliner, it's like an enterprise. It's more rigid, it's more controlled, it's more described. There's process in place to make sure you do it right. All of these things become critically important. The checklists are more involved, more detailed, and you have two people working on them to say what the checklist item is and the other person checks it, right? So these things become very, very important as you do your safety checks, but also as we start thinking about organizational success with AI, we have to think about some of these things as well. And I will get into it a bit deeper as we go. So here's my next mentee thing. So you can continue from where we left off. But if you're new or you haven't yet done it, or you dropped it, I want to ask you some questions around your worries about implementing AI within your organization. So on the left is not worried, on the right is very worried. And I'm asking about security, privacy, value. Are you worried about getting the value out of the implementation? You know, it's not nothing. You're going to be paying 10, 20 or 30 or $50 a month for these tools. Where does that, are you worried about making sure that you get value? Are you worried about bad content? In other words, inappropriate material being displayed as a result, either false material, like hallucinated material, or inappropriate material that, you know, could be an HR issue or other types of things. What are the things that worry you about that? And then kind of tied with value is poor adoption. And we're going to get into a little bit deeper on how you could see potentially some poor adoption. People are worried about security and privacy for sure, but these generally seem to be going across the board. Very cool. Additional things that I didn't ask? Any keywords, any words in there, things that you have concerns about, either for yourself or for your organization, as you think about implementing AI solutions where you are or using AI in your work? Much trust. We're going to talk about that one in a bit. By the way, these are all anonymous. I can't trace who said any one of these. So learning curve, support staffing, yes. All, that's interesting. I have to ask about that one when we have a chance. Leakage. We're going to talk about leakage a little bit. A couple of people have used accuracy. Use Big Brother. Big Brother, that's an interesting one. So to me, that might, if anybody wants to speak up, feel free. But to me, that means that someone can see the queries that you're doing or what you're working on. And yeah, that's a reality that we can look at. All right. Thank you for that. So leakage. So we're worried about information leakage and data leakage, but in the aviation metaphor that I'm stretching to the breaking point, this is the SR-71, which flew so fast that the panels got hot from the heat and they expanded. So they had to build it with gaps between the panels and the fuel would leak out before it took off. So it had to be refueled as soon as it took off because of the leakage that they were having here. But what I want to talk about is, let me know if you've had this experience where Copilot, Microsoft has made Copilot as safe as they possibly can, right? They want to make sure that some of those things that I talked about earlier, you know, of inappropriate material and hallucinations, they want to try and keep that to a limit. And the result of that is that sometimes you just feel like I'm not getting what I need out of this. It's not doing the trick. So you go off and you use another tool, right? And you know, maybe when we're talking later, we can talk about any other tools. Have any of you tried Anthropic? Do you pay for OpenAI? You know, what other tools do you use? I personally, I have a subscription to OpenAI, And I go there if I don't feel like I'm getting the answers. But you have to be super careful with going into these outside tools and making sure that they're keeping your data private and personal to you. There's a very famous story of Samsung, right? You guys all know the story, right? Where people were having code analysis being done. They were typing in note summaries from very private, very protected, what should have been protected meetings. And that stuff was released into OpenAI irrecoverably, right? It was just out there in the system. Now, OpenAI has implemented all sorts of guardrails. You can click a checkbox that says, don't save anything that I say in here and things. But, one of the things that Microsoft always takes very seriously and is very strong is that when they say that your stuff is inside, you know that it's protected and, encrypted at rest and all of those things. You might have to do some more research about what some of these other tools that you might be using are. And many organizations have blocked access to these other tools so that you can't leak data out. So information data leakage is critically important. And especially when the temptation exists to go outside and use other tools to figure things out. Now, you stole a bit of my thunder there about the Delve debacle. So at the previous company where I was, we had 60,000 people and Delve was released and it seemed like a good idea at the time. And so they turned it on. And, Microsoft always describes we respect permissions on what we share. Well, Microsoft tools respect permissions, but humans don't respect permissions. They don't treat their stuff well. They share to everybody. And this is what actually happened. Executive compensation in Brazil. All the executives in Brazil, the spreadsheet was surfaced, right? And so the COO said, shut it down. So Delve got shut down. And then a whole exercise went out that said, okay, here are everything that you've got shared to more than just me. Check it, fix it. And if you don't respond that you've checked it and fixed it, we're going to change all your shares to just me. We're going to run a script and we're going to change them to just me. And then they turned Delve back on. Slowly, it took a while to become useful again. So, and again, it was already mentioned, but restricted SharePoint search is going to strongly help because, I'm actually going to ask you these questions in a minute, but is your data governance in great shape? How confident are people that people are using good hygiene? There's only two answers to that question. It's not very good yet, or I'm going to lie to you, right? Because I have come across, I've been consulting for decades, and very, very few places have really great data hygiene. And by hygiene, I don't just mean permissions. I mean, is the old version of the handbook just as findable as the new version of the handbook? And so therefore, the rules that you're supposed to follow, are you getting the right ones or the wrong ones, right? So I have a client that I'm working with now that has shuttle flights between two of their locations. And this person, we were doing interviews and one-on-ones with different people. And he went to the wrong airport because his search turned up an older version of the document. Yeah. So your AI is not going to hallucinate. It's going to give you an answer based on data, but it's bad data because you haven't cleaned up that data. So Microsoft realizes this, and they realize that it might put a stop. An organization that's thinking about taking care to make sure that people have good data might say, we can't roll out Copilot until we do our content cleanup. And our content cleanup is number 36 of our list of priorities. So in other words, it's never going to get done. So this way, by enabling up to 100 sites where you can actually have Copilot point at, it's not going to put a huge roadblock up. Purview for Copilot, I am not at all an expert or even that knowledgeable about the details of Purview, but Purview is a place definitely that large organizations and smaller ones with important data are going to want to take advantage of to make sure that their data is controlled, audited. You can track what's happening. You can track who's doing what. Someone who wrote Big Brother, yeah, Big Brother is going to watch and make sure that you're not trying to dive for information that you shouldn't be looking at or other types of things. So it's really important that you set up these things. So this is, again, all under the purview of air traffic control. You're the pilot of your day, but air traffic control helps make sure that you don't run into trouble. So we're going to have another interactive piece. Organizational readiness. How ready do you feel your organization is in the context of content hygiene, permissions hygiene, and change management, training, and support, which will enable people to get the most of the investment? So I would say that this indicates a pretty good level of honesty among us here in the room, that that we know we're not where we should be on these top two items. Some organizations, especially in the last 5 years or so, have done a much better job around change management and support, and really understand that they're paying license fees for things that people aren't using appropriately, and therefore it's worth the relatively lightweight investment in change management in order to do that. So that's an interesting result. Thanks. And again, your chance to type in other things that you might think of as readiness issues within your organization that's preventing you from being able to really roll out, or even if you do roll it out or run a big pilot or whatever, are you actually getting value? You know, are a high enough number of people getting value out of that investment? If you're paying $30 a month or so, maybe 5% of the people are getting huge value. There's another chunk getting some, and there's another chunk getting perception. That's interesting. Pirate speak. Anyone's willing to explain what pirate speak means? Anyone's watching the chat? Maybe it was someone online. Yeah. Training is the big one. ROI, that's an interesting one. Proving the ROI as a stopper for rolling it out. Like, what are we going to get out of this for when we're paying for it? Okay, looks like we've got a good set there. Interesting. Knowing how to prompt. We're going to address that in a minute. Talking a little about efficiency. If you're planning your flight, you need to understand a little bit about how things work behind the scenes, because otherwise you won't understand how come that the red line is 600 miles shorter than the blue line, right? If you don't quite understand how circular navigation works and what a great circle route is, you might say, this is clearly wrong to fly the red line, right? But the red line is the short line. So he's having this level of understanding of what's really going on. So I'm going to walk through some of that in a second here. So, but always keep in mind, Microsoft does this at the bottom of everything, right? AI generated content may be incorrect. In order to get adoption and people feeling comfortable, they need to understand this and understand that Copilot is the co-pilot, not the pilot in command. You're the pilot in command, right? And you've got to check, use your biological neural network to double check that the information makes sense and is reasonable. And another story that I think many of us have heard of the lawyer who used ChatGPT and it made up cases that never existed. A dangerous situation. So I'm going to go through this example, which is in a certain sense trivial because we're going to type more words than if we just typed the email ourselves. So, but for the purposes of a presentation, I kept the example fairly lightweight, but just to kind of understand the evolution of, I call it the Yammer problem. How many people ever had that thing where you implemented Yammer, someone would go in and type, "Hi, I'm here, this is my first post." Nothing happened, and they never went back to Yammer again, right? Because they didn't see any value at all. So if you say, compose an email thank you note to a client, and it says, blah, 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 I'm writing to express my sincere gratitude for your continued trust. It was a pleasure working with you. Your insights have been invaluable to our team. Your support has played a key role in our growth and success. We're truly thankful for the opportunity to serve you. We look forward to sustaining it. It feels so generic. You can tell it was composed without really understanding or having a sense of what was really trying to be done here. So here's a little bit more, right? Using a professional tone, but taking into account that we've had a long-term business relationship, compose a very short email expressing gratitude for continued trust and loyalty. So now, thanks for your continued partnership. I'd like to express our heartfelt gratitude for trust and loyalty. So I use my words exactly. It's clients like you that make our work not only possible, but rewarding. Thank you for being an integral part of our journey. So it starts to become more specific, more natural, more direct. Next one. So I went away from that sequential interface to using the notebook interface, right? So if you're using Copilot, you have the option of using this notebook interface where as you type here, it updates here, and then you can edit your prompt and then see how it changes here. And so now I can sort of watch it evolve kind of in my face in real time. So write a concise, friendly thank you note to Mary at XYZ, a longtime client. Keep it businesslike but informal. Thank them for their trust and loyalty over a long period. So here it's nice and concise. It says, "Dear Mary," it doesn't have a block in place, right? So the more context, the more detail you provide. And this is the kind of, I know that a lot of you in this room and online already know a lot of this stuff because you're here because you know about this. But this is the kind of thing that you need to explain to your people so that they understand how to take advantage and use the problem, not fall into the Yammer trap of, I tried it once, it was useless, right? And then just for the last one, thank them for their trust and loyalty and for being their first client to test our new contabulator. So you remember the contabulator with the Fremont bearings, right? And so it includes that into the story. So the point I'm trying to make here is that I probably typed more here than the actual thank you note, but here's something else. I'm never going to have a typo in my thank you note, right? Even if I have a typo in the prompt, the thank you note will be grammatically correct and will not have spelling mistakes. And so there's value there as well, right? But getting it to sound like you a little bit, to be relevant to why you're sending the letter, not just make something up, right? But give it enough detail to do that is a very powerful way of using the tool and gets you to that efficiency. Microsoft has created a really nice 3-pager PDF. All you need to search for is the art and science of prompting.pdf. And I just picked out the second element of this, but it's got a really nice explanation. And it talks through how to think of a good prompt. What is the goal? What are you trying to get out of it, right? What's the context? In this case, what's the source? Because you can actually point it to various aspects of what's inside your firewall. Or the context might be not so much about a particular document, but you can describe the context. And then expectations, use simple language or, I showed this tool, AI, to a friend of a friend was visiting, and he's a doctor. And I said, have you tried AI or looked at it? No, I've read about it, but I haven't really looked at it. And so I used on my phone the ChatGPT voice thing. And I said, imagine someone walks into he's an emergency doctor. I said, imagine someone walks into the clinic. What would you say? So he held my phone and said, 40-year-old male with pain from the groin. I don't know. He described like 3 symptoms, and it came back with short, concise. He's wow, this is amazing. but then it says, you know, of course, it could be many other things. You know, and please consult a doctor. And so then I changed the prompt that said, speaking as a specialist to another specialist doctor, describe the differential diagnosis for these symptoms. And that was like a medical chart, right? Describing, you know, so setting what you expect out of it has a huge difference in what you're going to see as the output from that. And it's really important. Switching to a scary topic here. Misalignment of planning, understanding, and training can lead to dangerous situations. This is a failure of air traffic control, right? Safety goes out the window if people aren't on the same page. So this is a new topic, and I came across this study by Accenture, which I thought was really interesting because it's showing that people and leadership are not on the same page. You don't believe me? Misaligned, so this is Accenture, and I've got the link below. Misaligned perceptions between coworkers and CXOs, CIO, CTO, et cetera, on key concerns related to generative AI's impact on workforce, and workers. So workers say, Gen AI is increasing job insecurity. I feel less secure. 58% of people feel less secure. The leaders think that only 29% of people are concerned. That's a big difference. That's a misalignment. Somebody wrote in the free form thing, expectations, right? This is where expectations can kill your investment because people are worried, misaligned, fearful, and not getting the results they need. Workers, 82% say, I feel I understand the technology. That doesn't mean they understand how neural networks work, but they understand the context of the technology. They might not be correct, but 82% feel that they've got something. The CXOs say people are worried that they don't know. Well, you know, there's a misconnection there of expectations and understanding. Workers say, I'm confident I can learn the skills to leverage AI. 94% feel I'm pretty confident. CXOs say, we're going to be held back by lack of worker skill. Finally, I'm concerned that Gen AI might increase my stress and burnout. 60% of people are worried that it's increasing stress and burnout. Only 37% of leadership thinks that that's the case. 53% are concerned about quality of output. The leadership says, oh, only 1 in 5 are worried about quality of input. So I thought this was a really interesting, talking in the bigger picture that I've been talking about this evening, the idea that how are you going to be successful with the deployment of an AI tool when you have such splits in what people think is really going on and what the impacts are really going to be? So how can you help get around this? It's pretty straightforward. Training, support, and change management, right? You've got the team, you can be successful. That's a bit of a joke, but training, support, and change management are going to be essential to the success of the program. If you don't know who these people are, this is from the IT Crowd, British IT comedy. There is so much change happening so fast. The FAA publishes updates. In the old days, you used to have to replace pages in the book of, the airport information or the frequencies. Now it's much less often. They still do paper. But in between times, before they can publish something new, you have these NOTAMs, which are notice to aviators, that tell you things like the runway is out of service, right? So these are updates. So you have to check into these updates. How can you do this in the world of Copilot and AI? What are your pathways to trying to stay connected besides coming to this user group meeting? The Microsoft blog is a great place. They update it regularly and keep you up to date on what's new in Copilot. So this what's new in Copilot is not a blog. It's a blog that updates with fresh information all the time. So, and I got the link, and it's a really great place to try and keep up, try and understand where things are going and what's coming next. A little bit more explicitly is the roadmap, right? And you can access the Microsoft roadmap and see what's coming and when, and what features are in the pipeline and when they're rolling out. That's another really powerful way to keep up. Mondays at Microsoft. Blank, but Mondays at Microsoft with Caroline and Heather. Not always directly about AI, but another great place to hear discussion about what's going on and keeping on at Microsoft. Okay, switching to value. Air travel has exploded because the cost per mile has come down so radically over the decades, right? There's been a huge increase in the value of flying. I'm going to cover just a couple of examples of increases in value of having a Copilot implementation in your organization. Relatively recent ones. Some of you have seen these. Forms, Copilot in Forms. Have any of you used Copilot in Forms yet? Relatively new. I said, create a session evaluation for a user group presentation. I wasn't expecting a lot. I was pretty impressed. It laid it out really well. It came up with really great, things that I would include, but laid them out, did it all in there. Like just in a minute, you had a really great form set up for you. And I'm going to talk about this with my next example in more detail, but editing something that exists and adjusting it to what you need is so much easier than having a blank piece of paper and having to come up with it. Even if there's not one single thing that you leave alone on this, being able to have it there and then adjust it saves so much more time than starting it from scratch. So here's another one that's relatively new. Have you tried Whiteboard Copilot? So I got to tell you, when I played with this, I was pretty disappointed with it at first. I asked it to do all sorts of things. I said, try and do a timeline of boxes that show a rollout. No, nothing doing. I said, do a Kanban chart of things. It told me, create the Kanban, create the line that says that, it was useless. So I tried this example. Give me a bunch of ideas for recruiting Gen Z candidates. We want to win in hiring young, smart people. How can we do that? So it gave me a few things, and I said insert. Then I realized it wasn't enough, and I realized I could press the generate more. So every time it did 6. So I pressed it a couple more times. So I had 18 items to insert. I clicked insert, and it gave me the same boring yellow boxes, right? It came up with some interesting ideas, but this is not helping me, right? I could have just taken the list or done it within Loop or something like that, or in Word, and then laid it out and done that. But then I noticed the categorize button here. You click the categorize button, and it created marketing, networking, development, and recruitment. Now, this is helpful, right? A helpful starting point. Now, these look good. The networking thing didn't make sense to me, and I didn't think it was like I wouldn't have done it this way. And I was thinking that's not that great. And then I thought regenerate. I hit the regenerate button, and it reorganized those same 18 ideas into recruiting events, host virtual information sessions, create a brand ambassador program, collaborate with student orgs. Yeah, all right, that makes sense. Social media, do ads in social media, create a Gen Z focused Instagram account. All right, there's some good ideas there. Even if we X them out and put different things in place, it's pretty good categorization. Flexible work, offer flexible work engagement arrangements, offer remote work options. Getting tougher these days. Professional development, highlight opportunities for growth and development. This was a really time saver starting point. Now I can get together with 3 or 4 other people. We can have the meeting, move things around, add and subtract, but it really did a job. When I hit this and it did this, I almost had that same moment of feeling when I said, give me that 90-day IA work breakdown. I thought this was super useful. there's a good video with Jared Spataro, saying that their best users of AI are saving hours per week. Now, he said best users. That means a lot of users aren't saving hours per week, probably for a lot of the reasons that I've gone through already this evening. But the best users are saving hours per week. But then he asks the question, what do you do with those hours saved, right? And his answer, because he's a driving kind of guy, he says, you use those spare hours to do high value work, right? But maybe in your organization, of course, that's the obvious best answer, but maybe your team is feeling burned out. Maybe your team is feeling pressurized to always produce more than they have time for. Maybe this allows them to improve quality of life, to be able to leave early on Friday, to do something where they're still getting their work done. They're still providing high quality work, but they're a little less pressurized than they were. And that can have value for an organization as well. So when pilots lose contact with air traffic control, by the way, I went through some really weird outputs of this before I got something that was even close to making sense. They had them like, yeah, there was really weird pictures this thing came. Anyway, it's scary when you lose contact, when you're working without a net, so to speak, right? There's no air traffic control, there's no one coordinating. But even worse is if you're air traffic control and you lose track of your people, right? If you're in air traffic control and you can't contact the planes, then it looks like it's just chaos around you, right? Air traffic control, in other words, people responsible for governance, the people who are responsible for making sure there's ROI on the investment, want to make sure there's a strong connection. So I've got one more. So be the confident, safe, educated, engaged, valuable pilot of your work by making effective use of your Copilot. One more question there. I'm going to see it live. So I'm interested, and we'll discuss afterwards, or maybe if there's Q&A or whatever. This is a new presentation for me. I thought it was an interesting idea, but I'm really interested in feedback. Do you feel this resonated? Is it a way that you could use it yourself to explain things within your organizations? Or did I stretch the metaphor just a bit too far and it's broken? And also whether it hung together, whether it was clear. Yeah, thank you very much for attending tonight and for listening. And I'm happy and looking forward to hearing from you, questions, comments, and feedback. Thank you.
Of course, the only thing is the movie Airplane keeps running through my head now.
I didn't start by introducing myself. My name is Ruben Gotts. I am the Chief Strategy Officer at Signature Alliance. That's a small company, me and a couple of other people. And we don't do implementation. We work with partners to implement. We just do the strategy side. We help make sure that leadership understands what it is they're trying to do, what results they're hoping to get, how they'll measure that, and that we work with partners who actually do implementation. That's how you can reach me. All right.
Comment online. Rachel says she may no longer hate whiteboard.
I did hate whiteboard for a long time. I used mural instead, and whiteboard is now starting to catch up to be useful. Thanks, Rachel. That was good. Any other questions, comments, feedback, things you would change about the presentation?
You had that picture of when you launched it, of the pilots looking the wrong way in the cockpit.
Yeah.
How did it come up with that?
Yeah,
That picture is worrying me. That's one of the reasons I came here. I want to say, what was they thinking?
Oh,
The other one, the was
there's feed it backwards. Yes. Yeah, I know. That was the best I could get out of that craziness. No, it wasn't. But I did have one like this where their chairs were turned the wrong way.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, I don't know. It came up with some weird pictures.
Maybe Maybe this is a new way to fly a plane. Just don't look where you're going, just where you've been.
Boeing recommends.
Seriously.
Do you have any recommendations or thoughts on training that should be required or at least recommended prior to releasing Copilot into a client?
I think there needs, I think, my thesis is that there has to be something, right?
Yeah.
But gone are the days when you're going to take everyone out for a half day of training, right? I think that in the times that we're in now, you have to have a multi-channel way of doing it. You have that PDF that's 3 pages long. Some people like to read a document, right? Some people want to watch videos, but short videos, 30 seconds, a minute long, not a 15-minute video or a collection of snippets of videos. Some people want to watch like the Caruana and Heather show and listen up. So yes, you need to make material available to them. Something that probably has been talked about up here before is the idea of champions network. People who are enthusiasts within the organization get some training or self-study or whatever. And then there's various methods of, they can, in their signature file, they can be licensed to call themselves, the Copilot Ninja or whatever it is. And they can be people who, I don't know if you've had this talk before, but the idea of you sign a pledge saying, I'm going to do my day job, plus I'm going to be this thing. And you have some other way of signifying that. And you become a kind of a thought leader and a resource that people can go to. So when someone said, I tried it, it was useless, it was a waste of time, say, I'll come and meet you between 4:45 and 5. It's only going to take us 15 minutes and I'm going to show you a bunch of stuff that's going to blow your mind, right? Something like that. Yeah. So these types of champion networks can be powerful ways to do it. But whatever way you do it, it's got to be multi-channel. It's got to be something you can read, something you can watch, something you could listen to, that kind of thing. One-on-one when needed. Yeah.
Chat's exploding as well. Ruben, I really liked your approach with the story and examples. The AI generated images really had an uncanny valley, unsettling.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
We're doing a trial plus broke training down by the products. Some products may not be useful to users, i.e. OneNote. Another individual, we did a champions program for our pilot of Copilot and had a Microsoft team where people asked questions and shared ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Another one, I am about to try out top 10 things to try in Copilot using the one in the success kit. Other trial group, we are using the email tips from the email campaign kit and email out once a week, like the Tuesday tip, for example.
Right. Those are great. That's great to hear. That's what's needed, right? You need to see those kind of multi-channel approaches, multi-pronged approaches. Different people want different kinds of support and learn in different ways. So
at Staples, we actually have office hours every Wednesday, and we have a Microsoft representative come in and give ideas, suggestions, things like that. It seems to be working out rather well.
I have one word that concerns me about AI. Particularly it applies to high school students and university students. And the word is cheating. So let's open up this concept of cheat, you can plagiarize. These are things that can start to worry me. The intellectual property, we talked about that, but the plagiarism and cheating is something that really is drawing high attention to me, some of my thoughts.
it's a problem. I saw a really interesting little video of a teacher who embeds in the question. She makes tiny white text on white background with keywords that have nothing to do. So in the middle, she says Frankenstein and hole in one or something like that. Yeah. And that's embedded in tiny text between two paragraphs. And so if a student cuts and pastes into AI, she just searches the finished document for the word Frankenstein And if it's got it in there, she knows that they fed it into. They fed it into. But that's a stopgap. Smart kids will figure out ways around that. Other things that I've read are essentially show your work in intermediate things. So the finished paper is not the marked or the only marked thing. It's in class, present on a summary of your research so far, right? So that there has to be intermediate work. And even if a person resorted to AI to get the results as opposed to reading themselves or whatever, they have to stand up and present their research and answer questions about it. And so they can't just paste it in and hand it in, right? So it's the process that you measure, not just the result, to try and avoid some of that.
There's some other stories that are out there as well. One of the biggest ones that I was told from someone in our cybersecurity team was there's a professor somewhere in the Midwest actually said, you know what, we're not going to get around it. So he said, you have to use ChatGPT 4.0. But you will also have to go over it because I will look for hallucinations. I'll make sure that he went down a laundry list. So he's like, yeah, I expect you to use it, but this is also what I expect as well. And actually set a new expectation across his entire classes.
So he's integrating prompt engineering into his curriculum.
Basically, yeah.
What doesn't seem to be working,
That's cool.
what doesn't seem to be working is anti-plagiarism tools.
Yeah.
Someone was recently went through a big problem because they had used a spell and grammar checker, and that was flagged as AI, when normally a spell and grammar checker is not considered plagiarism, right? I think so.
Yeah, and that's a constant no-win game of cat and mouse anyways. That's
So
that's
you've
going to
got
be a non-starter. You can't use an AI to detect another AI.
that arms race otherwise.
Right.
So just throw a leg in there instead.
Or different ones at each other, to see what they can learn from each other.
Well, and that's the beginning of the end.
Yeah, well, that's where it started that, they
Yeah.
started chatting their own language to AI.
But
Yes.
it depends like what you're trying to measure by having somebody write a paper, right? Like Cliff Notes have been around forever, right? Before that, to your point, spell checking, is that considered cheating? Depending on what level you're in, right? So the question might also shift, instead of saying, hey, let's go write, a 20-page paper, why don't we talk more about and quiz you on, dynamics between characters within the book that you're supposed to read and summarize, or kind of take more of a, what are you trying to extract rather than just, checking off, yes, they wrote a 20-page paper.
But I can generate content in AI with exactly that prompt.
Yeah.
But not office
Yeah.
questions until you get to class.
But again, but not like as homework, but more, okay, tomorrow we're gonna spend an hour talking about this in class, right? Here's a quiz. Right, so there's other ways you can prompt people. I mean, calculators have also were seen as a big cheating tool until you get to certain levels of math where you have to use a calculator because,
They told me I was never gonna have a calculator on me all the time.
You used a slide rule, so what do you?
I just like, that was awesome.
I think to your point, though, I think academia will be changed forever.
Yeah.
By
If they
this
say open,
tools,
no.
because even all of the things that are being suggested, there's been some wonderful ideas discussed here. It puts a huge burden on the teachers and how these things are brought about. And, a lot of these teachers don't need extra burden. So,
I think the skill is gonna be to recognize good writing. Before it was like, you have to be a good writer. Now it's like, can you recognize good writing? Because the prompts will help you get there, but it's that, having them have that intelligence to look for it, recognize it. No, that isn't right. Yeah, that's right. No, that's not right.
I think it's also really important to recognize one of the things that a lot of YouTubers that have been talking about this have been saying over and over again is this technology is at the worst that it will ever be right now. So it's only going to get better and better and better. So all of these things that people are saying, oh, AI can't do that. You mean they can't do it right now?
they have like suites where it's just an AI YouTuber and it's not an actual person, and then it holds that account and it responds to subscribers and it like makes videos that with the text to speech stuff. There's completely it's kind of YouTubers are being outcompeted by AI agents. Wrap it up.
Well, AI is now dubbing movies and they're fixing
Yes.
the
They're dubbing movies and even doing the lip syncing. I think that's fascinating. Yeah.
But the patent office here, patent, depending on where you come from, has actually said you can't patent or patent AI, which is really, really interesting ruling. Just
AI image.
yes,
Yeah.
or no
There have
AI.
actually been some mixed rulings on that because there have been some things that have said certain levels of input because of the degree of sophistication of the input, it can be. But there have been many court cases and they have come to different conclusions. So yeah, it's a fascinating area to watch.
I'm sure as time progresses, the legal side of it will also get cleared up. I mean, this is brand new technology and US law moves pretty quickly. I mean, slowly. So it's going to take some time.
Ruben, one of the things that you kind of alluded to on return of investment is all the different clients and customers that you guys have worked with so far. From a return of investment, what area of a company do you find gets the highest value at? For example, legal does or sales does. If you had a range.
First of all, some of our clients are conducting studies on this and don't have their results in yet. You know, it's very early days for piloting these things. So, you know, I would stay watching the blogs and other things when I'm sure Microsoft will be the very first to publicize as some of these results start coming in. But because, you know, there are very specific areas where AI is being adapted, you know, whether it's in healthcare or other types of things or engineering, where rather than the general kind of let's make this paragraph better or let's come up with a plan for an implementation, it's more like how do we diagnose this disease, right? So I don't think I can give an answer on that in early days. I know that for us and our own experience with usage, and I know that others are using it day to day, any of those, creating and editing things like proposals or RFP responses or you know, a white paper or something like that. It just really accelerates. It gives you something to start with that you can then edit and make more natural. But I think that that's been a real accelerator that we found, especially as a small group.
Interesting.
Anybody in the room willing to talk about their experiences and trials? I'm not just staring at you.
So we've had about 350, 400 people for over 9 months, something like that. It's a really interesting experiment. So part of what we did was we created a Viva Engage community, and we said, we will give you a Copilot license for 30 days. And you must post your experience at Viva Engage. And if you do that, then we will renew you for another 30 days. And so we created a flow, and one for even months, one for odd months. So right now we're in the month of March, this is March, right? Yeah. Which is a odd month. And so if you post anytime this month, we add you to the even month licensing group. And then at the end of the month, we delete everyone out of the other group, right? So the idea behind it is that if you are not sharing, you get 30 days to play with it, and then we'll give it to someone who will. And it created the most engaged community I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. That's been incredibly valuable, just to have people saying, hey, I tried this, it didn't work at all. I was disappointed. What would you do? And then 5 other people swarm in because they're like, great, I'm going to get my renewal off of this comment. And that's been really good.
Do you have a sense of what is a pattern of what the winning use cases are?
Sure. Teams is by far the most mature. Obviously, within meetings, within chats, there's some vulnerabilities to it, which are interesting that we're working on right now. So for example, let's say that you had a sensitive meeting. And Reuben, you're invited into the meeting for 15 minutes to go present. You walk in for 15 minutes and you say, catch me up on everything that happened before I was there. So really interesting things that we've never thought about before. You got to start to think about, because you can recap what happened before you were invited into that slot in the meeting.
Does going into a room help solve that? Or do you still get the, like, let's say we all go into
The
one of
teams
the.
room.
The biggest one's recurring meetings, because you think about it,
That's right, yeah.
senior leadership recurring meeting, and then you bring in, like, say, a director, they can use Copilot and actually get everything from previous.
It's interesting. So that's awesome. Coaching inside Outlook is awesome. Basically tells you when you're about to be a jerk. It's like, hey, you can be more thankful. You should appreciate the person's effort. Like, make these changes before you hit send. People think I'm a whole new person. It's the Office apps are terrible still.
Yes.
They have a journey to do.
Yes.
You know what your turn rate is? People dropping off that list didn't.
Typically, we will get 20 to 30 people who miss it and then beg for a path back in.
Okay.
It's very low in terms of people who actually accept losing it.
You know, you reminded me that email thing can be really powerful. I was reconnecting with someone that I hadn't spoken for a long time, and I was reminding them of our connection and, you know, trying to rekindle that. And then I passed it through Copilot and it said, this is pretty good. There's no call to action. There's no, I'm going to call you next Wednesday, or can we talk next? I thought, that's the whole point of my letter, and I didn't even put it in there, and I caught that, right?
But do that about halfway through the meeting, right? So, because customers are saying to me that, man, Teams recording, just turn on the recording and the transcription. And that's the best feature of Copilot that they've seen so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But halfway through the meeting is summarize the to go to action bullet points for the last 10 minutes in table format. And it produces something that's like totally accurate.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
We're loving that.
Oh my
We're transcribing all meetings now. It's so powerful.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're all back to back to back to back to back, right? So we can't remember last meeting from this meeting or context of, you know, meeting 2 weeks from now when we have follow-up. So
Yeah, it means that I can listen better, because otherwise I'm taking notes because I know I won't remember next time.
Oh, yeah.
Miss what was said while you're typing.
Yeah.
exactly.
Like to make a vote for the worst Copilot so far, and that is Power Apps. I asked it to generate a multi-part form. It was beyond useless at doing anything that what I would call as clever. So it
On the Canvas side of
completely
it?
links on the canvas.
I can see you having more like a framework and a good structure, and this stuff is just AI, you know, it's
Yeah,
apples and oranges. Like,
on the Power Automate side, it's creating the syntax and so forth, but the formula.
It's a little better.
yeah, a little better.
Game
Yeah.
changer.
Oh, yeah. Okay. This is the vote for the sub use. So I'm voting Power Apps. Anyone else?
PowerPoint?
PowerPoint.
Excel.
Excel.
Excel's terrible.
Our automate, I don't know how many times we had people come into our office hours saying, I tried the Copilot on our production. I'm like, oh no, here we go. Yeah,
For me, my vote's for Excel just because the promise is so huge.
Yeah,
Like the idea, I always just assumed that Excel would be the best one, because it's like, oh, I'm never gonna have to Google the syntax for a freaking formula
Yeah.
again. And that turns out to not be the case.
online, we get other people saying PowerPoint and Excel as well. We've got a despise on the new Power Automate Designer. Yeah, that's, don't get me started on that. And then we have one user, the coworker, that asked him if he was feeling okay because of how his email writing was changed.
What's the plan?
And asked if they were feeling okay because their email writing had changed so dramatically.
So who's using the new restrictive SharePoint search? What do we think of that?
What's that?
Sure.
RSS feature coming out? I think Dimitri mentioned it.
Yeah, it's where you can limit the scope of our Copilot. I mean, I think on some sites, that's one of the biggest barriers that we have selling like pilot engagements is just a matter of, we're not quite ready there. We know we have a mess. Don't talk to me about Copilot until, we address this. And, to Ruben's point, it's number 40 on the priority list.
Yeah.
So I think this would be a game changer to really, get these pilots off the ground.
Yeah, and it seems like it would be a good thing to use even in like a short term, because you can use it at the beginning and then just open it up and add more and more to it as you feel more secure with it.
Yeah.
It's a good use case. I haven't had the opportunity to roll it out to anybody.
So just in the interest of time, I do want to cover some of the closing slides. But I don't want to steal it. But if there's any other questions for Ruben, please speak while you're around. Hold your piece. All right. So we do have an open call for speakers. We are talking to a few presenters in the coming months, but we'd love to hear from you. So if you have a topic, if you want to come share how your organization is using Copilot, successes, failures, everything in between. But Copilot's kind of the hot topic these days, right? It's new. Everyone wants a piece of it. No one really knows exactly how it works. So it's a great topic, but this user group covers pretty much the entire Office 365 stack, right? So this could be other projects that you're conducting, how your company's embracing new features, or even just a deep dive onto some unique feature that no one's used before. So definitely submit, or on the flip side, if you have a topic that you're really interested in, let us know and we will find a speaker in the community that specializes in that area, and we'll invite them in to present either in person or virtually. All right, so moving forward, so upcoming events. There's the Microsoft Fabric Conference taking place next week in Vegas. There's the North America Collaboration Summit hosted by Mark Rackley. That's happening in Dallas in a few weeks. Then there's the M365 conference in Orlando, end of April. There's a Power Platform conference in September. And Microsoft recently announced that Ignite will be in person over in Chicago this year. And that's going to be both online as well as in person. So check that out. There will likely be another, SharePoint Saturday Collab Days this fall. We'll have to check with the team there. But does anyone know of any other events happening locally or nationally? There's a bunch of European ones we didn't include on this slide.
Build's coming up in June sometime.
Yep.
Good announcements there.
Microsoft Build Conference for developers. All right, let's keep rolling. So there's a lot of great community platforms out there. If you go to pnp.github.io, there's a variety of other monthly as well as weekly calls. If you're interested and you have time, there's nonstop areas within the community to really tap into. And to Ruben's point, there's a few of those sessions that have happened, but there's a lot of additional ones as well. There's other user groups in the area. We want to give them a quick shout out. So across New England, there are all sorts of them. I believe most are still active. Some take breaks, some meet infrequently, but we are not the only one. Speaking of which, we are coming upon our 10-year anniversary this May.
Oh,
A lot of faces here and online have been here since the very beginning. All right. So is anyone running into any problems within their environment? This is just more of a free chat, or is anyone solving really difficult challenges that you'd like to share?
Still recording.
We are still recording. We have a slide coming up in terms of anyone hiring or looking for work. Stop the recording from that slide. Yes, Mike.
So I have just a really awesome, and I guess kudos back to Microsoft thing. List forms has been released. For those of you that don't know, I think this was in the update deck last month. It wasn't talked about this month, but basically in Microsoft Lists, you can now customize a specific form to that list, and you can actually publish, you'll get a unique link to that form. So if you want to be able to have people add information to a list, but you don't want them to have access to that list, you can now do that directly. So for anybody,
But they need access.
no, they do not need access. That's one of the key things is they do not have to have permission to the root list. It's why this makes it a big game changer. You can also have multiple forms that point to the same list. You can turn these forms on and off. It's a fantastic idea. It's a fantastic use case. It's very new, but it is in my tenant and one of my clients' tenants. As of right now, I've only been able to get it to work on a brand new list that I create now. So it's not available on previously existing lists, but I assume that that's going to change in the future. I hope, please, oh, please, because this is just a wonderful thing. Anybody who was using like a Microsoft form to collect data and then had to build a Power Automate to then take the information from that form and jam it into a SharePoint list, this is going to get rid of at least half of those for you. It's a wonderful replacement to that sort of solution. And I'm super excited about it because I have a ton of those scenarios.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. You kind of lost me in the first half because I was thinking of SharePoint list forms, like in traditional SharePoint, but then the Microsoft forms, yeah, I saw that coming across. Just saves a few clicks.
Reza Durrani, I think that's his name. He recently put out a video that covers it in depth. And it's wonderful. Reza's videos are also always awesome. So I highly recommend following him. So
There was a question online. Though they were thinking, wait. Wrong one. Missed it by that much. All right. Does anyone know if M365 Copilot is available on the Mac OS in the Excel desktop version? And the answer is yes. Yes, it is. I have a Mac and a PC, but I strongly use a PC.
You know what's interesting? I found Copilot for PowerPoint works better in the browser than it does in the desktop app.
interesting.
That is true. I actually saw that.
Has anyone played with the GPTs in Copilot Pro yet? They aren't in the enterprise SKU, but I'm curious if anyone's played with the GPTs in Copilot Pro. 4 or 3. So they have a GPT builder in the commercial product. It's not in the enterprise product. I saw a couple posts about it the other night. I thought that was interesting, and I hadn't had a chance to play with it.
That in OpenAI, but not in.
No, on
Copilot Studio.
You mean Copilot Studio?
I don't mean Copilot Studio.
You don't mean
I
Copilot
don't.
Studio.
I saw
Oh,
a very interesting posts on LinkedIn about it like 2 days ago, and I'm like, I don't really feel like buying another license for a different SKU. So I was curious if anyone had happened to play with that on the consumer side.
We know it was a thing.
I've heard about it, and you know, like many others, I have a Chat GPT subscription, just stay on top of things. It's probably using similar models.
I actually have a question for the room, just something that's come across my desk, which isn't necessarily my job at work, but that it would help out based on some knowledge that I have. But I'm wondering, so we have a technical services department, and what they do is they manage the schedule for about 40 or 50 people in an Excel sheet. And I'm curious if anybody believes there to be a way to create a Power App that would be let's say a workday schedule in half-hour increments where you could scrape everybody's individual calendars to build that automatically.
Bookings.
What is it?
Bookings.
Bookings? Is that what you're
I would use bookings. Create a calendar in bookings. Have everyone as a staff member for that calendar.
Yeah.
Automatically drags it in each of their
saying?
calendars.
Like every individual worker had they have a meeting from 9 to 10, so they have to be off the phones, and then somebody else. So it's like, yeah.
We'll do that. Blocks out the bits that you already got.
Is that a free?
It comes with M365.
Oh, I've never heard.
Just click on the waffle top left corner, all apps, look for
Or that if we
bookings.
have the new menu, search will be right there. Right?
Or if you have the new menu. search, yes.
Okay, very cool. Thank you.
Saves you that explore all apps click.
As much fun as writing it out, it sounds awesome. It's already in there, like reduced VA sauces.
Is there a license for that?
Bookings.
It's included in most packages.
It's in most packages.
Maybe E3, I think.
E3, oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Definitely 3. If you said F3, that'd be a little bit.
Business Basic has it.
Okay.
So.
Does anyone else run into any problems with their O365 environment recently?
Oh, wait, you're serious? Oh, okay.
All right, let's keep moving forward. We do have to be out here at 8, and we want to respect the time that we get from Microsoft here, so we'll keep rolling through. So thanks to Trend Digital for sponsoring, and thank you to all. Thanks to all of our previous sponsors as well. They've really, supported us for 10 years. Some of these companies are no longer around. They've been acquired or they've merged with others. Sponsors. We'll probably update this at some point. But they were accurate as of when they sponsored. I just realized we, for some reason, have this slide hidden about people hiring and looking for work. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now, and we could just take a quick sidebar on that.